This week on The Comic Box. More backstory to the MCU's Black Widow. Adam West and Burt Ward return to the roles that made them famous. And I ask my wife if she's Team Cap or Team Iron Man. Bop-a-doo, dop-a-doo, comics. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. My name's Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and as always, we got so much stuff for you guys this week. So let's jump straight in with some comic book news. First, Marvel Comics. Civil War II is now seeing delays and has also been expanded so the main series will last 8 issues. The reason for the delay is that artist David Marquez and his wife just had a new baby. So hey, life happens. Congrats to them. I'm okay waiting a little longer because that means that the artists and, writers on a series can be happy. I don't think that's anything to complain about. Solicitations are out for November. Hooray! I don't know if I'm going to turn it into a regular thing where I'll go through the solicitations just because there's so many of them, but I figure at the very least I can pick out a couple things worth mentioning. For those not familiar, solicitations are just the ads that are put out to the general public and to comic book store owners each month so that they can sort of decide what it is that they want to order and to give us fans sort of a hint of what's to come. So here's just a couple things I thought I'd point out. First, we're getting a new Venom series where he's returning to New York City. So it's saying a thing like no more Agent Venom, no more Space Knight, no more Lethal Protector. They seem to be teasing that it's a new person in the Venom costume, and once again, he is a straight-up villain. Next in the solicitations was Unworthy Thor, and I think I might have mentioned this in the past. Currently we have Jane Foster, sort of, maybe. We'll talk a little bit about that in the reviews, but our female Thor, and so the former Thor is now just calling himself Odin's son, or the Odin's son, and he is unworthy to lift the hammer Mjolnir, known as Mia Mia to the movie fans. The Unworthy Thor is a mini-series which is going to follow Odin's son as he goes after the ultimate Thor's hammer, which survived the Secret War crossover and exists somewhere in the current main Marvel universe. So in this, I think it's a 5-issue mini-series, we're going to see Thor versus other villains as they compete to see who can get their hands on the hammer, and from there, well, Thor's still going to have to lift it. Do you guys remember all the negativity over the new female Iron Man of being like, she'll be a woman Iron Man, but it's called Iron Man? And even with, I'm going to say rational people like me, pointing out that the armor, once we then got to see what the new armor looks like, we're like, well, it's actually still pretty Iron Man-ish. It doesn't have an overtly female form, so that would be really cool that we would have a woman inside the Iron Man armor. Maybe people just won't know that it's a woman. So then you can play with some of those gender issues, kind of like Mighty Thor is doing. Well, that's not happening either, because we now have learned that the new female Iron Man is actually going to have her own name, and so that hero name will be Ironheart. So the new female Iron Man is not being called Iron Man, so any of you out there that were having issues of that can stop complaining now. Next up on the Marvel solicitations is there's the new Thanos series coming, and it's written by Jeff Lemire. I've heard great things about his writing. A lot of people liked his Animal Man run, but the fact that there's somebody that's not Jim Starlin writing a Thanos series kind of scares me, because every other time somebody's written for the character, he just kind of turns into big space bully rather than what he should be, which is an intricate, intelligent character, because as we know from Loki from the movies or any other good villain, a good villain has layers. I mean, if they're giving him another self-titled series, hopefully we're going to see a little bit of that. Little scared, but going to check it out. I'm a big Thanos fan. Finally, Occupy Avengers. I had brought this up when we were talking about new Marvel series. We know a little bit more now that they've put out the solicitations. It sounds like Hawkeye is going to sort of be not really a hero for hire, but somebody that normal people can come to when they have problems with superheroes, not caring, or it's the idea of somebody needs to stand up for the little guy in this world of superheroes, so who better than the superhero who is himself a regular guy? That's the idea behind Occupy Avengers. It doesn't seem like something that I'm going to pick up, but I wanted to make sure you guys sort of had a better idea of what that story is going to be. Moving over to Marvel movie news, Gambit, which has run into so many issues until now, has lost its director. but Channing Tatum is still attached to star. Nothing seems to be okay with this movie. For a while they didn't have Channing Tatum, then he came back, now they're having director issues. So I'm just going to make my prediction right now that Gambit is not going to be a very good movie. If they're going through this many changes, then I can't assume that there's anything solid in place, which means it might be lots of rewrites or who knows what. I'm just going to assume that Gambit's not going to be a great movie. Here's some sort of cool Captain America Civil War news. The novelization of the movie is now out, and sometimes these work off earlier versions of the script, sometimes the author gets a creative license to maybe add some stuff in, but either way, we get a little bit more backstory as far as Black Widow's history within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In an extra scene or an extra bit of conversation between Black Widow and Cap, she says that when she was being trained in Russia, there were dozens of girls who were there with her, and they were allowed to live together and become friends, but then they were all dropped off in the tundra 2 weeks' walk from home with only enough supplies for one of them to survive. Obviously, Natasha is the one that's still around, so clearly when she talks about having red in her ledger, she's not just talking about missions she was sent on after she graduated from the Red Room. Still no confirmation on whether that Black Widow movie is going to happen. It's been teased by studio head Kevin Feige, and Joss Whedon has said that he'd be up to direct if the studio was willing to ask him. And that wasn't a challenge. It just sounded like if they'd asked me, I'd probably do a Black Widow movie. But, maybe if that happens, we'll get a little more of this. I can't imagine we wouldn't get more of this backstory. As much as some people, like Void, hate origin stories, I don't think you could do a Black Widow movie that doesn't explore her past. Speaking of the ladies of the MCU, it seems we are one down on that count. Natalie Portman is not returning in Thor Ragnarok as Jane Foster, and says she pretty much figures that she's done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, she didn't say that she would not return, just that as far as she's aware, there's no plans for her character to return. Which, let's face it, is a real relief, because who needs women in Marvel movies? Ridiculous. I would love for this to be a lie that then turns into a female Thor character showing up after Infinity War. I don't know that that's going to be the case. Still talking Marvel, in Marvel TV news, Runaways is coming to television, or streaming, I guess, courtesy of Hulu. Runaways was a really good comic. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I read it on a suggestion from a friend. It's created by Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alfona. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's about a group of kids. Most of them have some sort of power, but they learn that their seemingly normal parents are actually supervillains. And so, you guessed it, they run away to live on their own. It was almost like an underground book that I don't know if they had great sales, but they had a really big following, and it was passed from a couple different creators over time. Point being, it was a really good book, so we'll see what happens with the TV show. It has been developed previously as a movie, but then nothing happened with it, so it was never made. When I say developed, it means they had it in development, they were working on scripts, but we never actually saw a finished film. I say if they can give us like a Buffy-like feel on the show as far as the group, then I think we'll have a really good show. While we're talking Marvel TV, director Bryan Singer, who helmed much of the X-Men films, says that the Legion TV show, which we've talked about in the past, will relate to future X-Men movies, but then also be able to exist on its own. We didn't really get details beyond that, so I don't know to what extent the show would relate to the films, but that's also apparently going to be the case for the other untitled upcoming X-Men related TV show. Again, one that we've spoken about on the show, where it's about two human parents who have a mutant child. Now, I wouldn't assume that these connections are going to be direct just because of, budgetary things involved, and I certainly wouldn't assume that we're going to see any of the big name actors from the from the X-Men movies in the X-Men TV shows, because again, you're just talking budget stuff that I just don't think they're going to be able to afford. Lastly, in Marvel TV news, if you're a fan of Spider-Gwen, keep an eye out for the upcoming episode of Ultimate Spider-Man called Return to the Spider-Verse. They're going to officially introduce the character on the cartoon, which is cool. I look forward to it. I haven't read anything with Spider-Gwen. Like many people, I just think it's a cool-looking costume and idea. But yeah, when it comes out on Netflix, I'm sure I'll watch it. Let's move over to DC Comics, shall we? Also, they put out their November solicitations. There was just one big thing that stood out from the DC solicitations was a book called New Talent Showcase #1, and I love this. So DC has their DC Talent Development Workshop, where writers, and I assume artists as well, they only mentioned the writers in the solicit, but they get to work with some of the big names in DC to sort of develop their talent, and then in this one shot, they each get to do little stories or little bits or little pieces of artwork. I love this idea. What a cool way to let up-and-coming artists and writers get a shot at big DC characters and get their talents out in front of us readers who maybe tend to only stick to the big two or, larger image names. Next up, we have kind of a cool piece, and this made some normal news headlines as well out in the internets. But an art director and sort of a creature FX guy who's been making costumes and things for years has taken the Guinness World Record for the most functional gadgets on a cosplay suit by building a Batman suit with 23 functional gadgets. I'll leave a video link in the show notes. You can go and check it out. They show some of the gadgets on there and the rules that he had to follow in order to attain the world record. Next up, Wonder Woman artist Liam Sharp has signed an exclusive 2-year contract with DC Comics. I say cool. I'm a big fan of that book and his art in particular, so I'm happy to see what more he comes up with or what more DC sort of assigns him. It sounds like he was really excited to get the offer as well, so good for Liam Sharp. If you're a fan of his work on Wonder Woman, keep an eye out. It seems like he's going to be doing a lot more for DC. Moving over to DC movie news. Remember how I said that Gambit lost its director? Well, that is because he's headed over to DC to work on Dark Universe, which is the movie featuring the Justice League Dark. I thought this thing didn't even exist anymore as a project, but I think it's going to be great that we're actually possibly going to see a Magick-based DC movie that doesn't involve the Enchantress belly dancing under big green swirlies in the sky for no reason. So this director is Doug Liman. He's the guy that did Bourne Identity and Edge of Tomorrow, which was a pretty good movie, I think underrated, or maybe just didn't get seen nearly enough because it had Tom Cruise in it. I'm not going to hold out hope that DC is going to be able to steer the ship around and start making quality films, but I am curious to see a movie take with, it looks like John Constantine, Swamp Thing, Deadman, Zatanna, and Etrigan the Demon all together with a movie budget, like a DC comic book movie budget. I am curious to see what that will look like. And honestly, of all these dark DC movies, if you're going to do one that's so dark it's hard to actually see the screen, it should be the Justice League Dark film, or Dark Universe as they're calling it. If you guys listen to my podcast a lot, you'll remember that Guillermo del Toro was the one originally set to direct this one, but then stepped aside because it's been sort of stuck in development for years. But now he's still set to produce, and supposedly he wrote a recent draft of the script. So if they're sticking with the del Toro script, and they're letting the guy who directed Edge of Tomorrow direct the film, I don't know, maybe they can actually turn out something well. Because again, out of all their dark, depressing movies, this is the one I feel like DC has been practicing for with the recent, I don't know if you want to call them failures, but the recent movies that sort of miss the mark tonally. It would just be awful if they moved to this happy-go-lucky, everybody spouting one-liners thing, and then they get to Dark Universe, which really isn't a great title, but then they get to Dark Universe, and they're still making it happy, and you're like, oh, you missed it again. You missed it again, DC. Anyway. That's a thing to look out for. Next up, there's a trailer for a new animated DC movie. This one stars Adam West, Burt Ward, and Julie Newmar. If those names sound familiar, it's because you have heard of the 1966 Batman live-action television show. So this is an animated 66 Batman movie called Batman Return of the Caped Crusaders. It comes out digitally on October 11th, then out on DVD and Blu-ray combo pack on November 1st. There's a trailer out. I can throw it in the show notes for you guys. I wasn't super impressed by the trailer, except for the very last bit where they're about to cross the street and Batman stops them because it is illegal to jaywalk, so he's like, to the crosswalk! I can't do a good Adam West. I'd have to work on that impression. I loved the 66 Batman growing up. I haven't really watched much of it in recent years. I've never revisited it since it came out on DVD. So if you're a fan, though, and this is a thing you wanted, you're going to get it. Let's move over to DC TV, shall we? I have nothing for DC TV. You'd think I would have scrolled down before I said that. Let's move over to the rest of comic things. Get away from the big two. If you're a fan of The Tick, Spoon! Yeah, I love that Tick cartoon, man. So, which again, many of us know The Tick from the cartoon, or there was the previous live-action series, which I never really got behind. It started as a comic book. The Tick is originally a comic, and there's a new pilot for a new live-action Tick series on Amazon, which you can watch for free even if you don't have the Amazon Prime streaming service. Link is in the show notes. Haven't seen it yet for myself. I'm hopefully going to get to that at some point this week, and I'll let you guys know what I think. Robert Kirkman, creator of The Walking Dead, has another long-running comic book over at Image called Invincible. It's a superhero story. I can't really say a whole lot about it because I have not read it, but I'm definitely going to start because issue 144 will be the series' last. They're kicking off a final 12-issue arc starting in November with issue 133, so if you're an Invincible fan, I'm sorry if you love the book that it's coming to an end, but if you're not, like I am, now's the perfect time to start reading. So I'm going to be checking out the library, checking out back issues, trades especially, because I love it when I can binge a comic book series. So I know that that's sort of a bad way to go about it because I'm reading it once it's done, which means I'm not supporting it, which means I could be hurting sales, which means it leads to the cancellation of the series. But at my age, children, I just don't have the time to keep up with as many series month to month, so I'm a trade guy. I'm looking to go back and binge this series, and speaking of going back and binging the series, Dumbbells and Dragons, another podcast which you folks should certainly listen to. They are a friend to the Geek to Geek podcast network. They hit me up on Twitter and they mentioned Overdrive, which is apparently similar to the Hoopla app that I have brought up in the past, which lets you connect to your local libraries and digitally check out titles that they have digitally. Except Overdrive does not have monthly limits, except that you can only have a certain number. I think they said 30 checked out at one time. Unfortunately, I looked online and it looks like while it is similar to Hoopla, you can only use certain libraries. So the library itself needs to be signed up with Overdrive for you to be able to use Overdrive. Because I punched in my zip code and it was not able to find my library, but it could find previous libraries from towns that I used to live in. I tried my old library card from when I lived in Iowa, but apparently they know I don't live in Iowa anymore. So I was not able to do it to check in, which is unfortunate because I'd love to read as much as possible, and I love picking up random things. So I'm thinking I can't use it, but I want to make sure you guys are aware that that is out there. So if Hoopla does not have your library, or if you're hoping to get more things out at one time, check out Overdrive, because that might be the way to go for you guys. Meanwhile, in reviews. That was almost an SNL voice, wasn't it? Yeah, anyway, reviews. Once again, I have 2 weeks worth of reviews to catch up on, but luckily, the week I am missing only had 2 comics. So let's kick it off with Green Lanterns number 5. In this issue, Simon and Jessica go up against the Red Lanterns and don't do so hot. Jessica lets her anxiety and fear get the best of her and hides, while Simon just thinks he can go straight for Atrocitus, leader of the Red Lanterns, and gets his arm broken for his trouble. So things aren't looking good for our heroes. But that makes it for a pretty good read. I am all for seeing my heroes fail every once in a while. So really digging in, and especially since this is their first adventure together, really showing us their flaws as heroes is a great way to start things off. Next up, we'll skip to this week for Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps number 3. Pretty good issue. In this one, we have Hal taking on a whole group of Yellow Lanterns and also not faring very well. Maybe too big a challenge for him, that he thought he could handle it and then found out that he couldn't. As the Yellow Lanterns continue to spread fear around the universe, their individual power grows as well. So you continually see this little thing talking about how their fear power or whatever it is, the power of fear in the rings, the ring charges are increasing 100%, 150%, 200%. So the Yellow Lanterns are individually getting stronger as their power grows throughout the universe. So it's a neat setup for things to come. And the book also looks really good. The art is pretty solid in this one. I was really enjoying it. Next up, in DC, we have Wonder Woman number 5. I believe the character that shows up in here, there's a woman with a scar across her eye. I believe that's Sacha Bordeaux, who I only know from a couple random issues of Greg Rucka's Checkmate run. If so, that's very cool because it's nice to see that Rucka's sort of holding on to his characters. Whatever, I'm getting lost here. As far as plot for this book, we finally see Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor's plot lines start to come together. So that's nice, and beyond that, as we've talked previously, the art in this book is really good. Again, this book jumps back and forth between an origin story and modern day. This issue is modern day, so I think they said a couple of weeks yet. So maybe they're not doing bi-weekly anymore. I want to say this issue said in 3 weeks is the next one, which is good because as much as I like just getting story and being able to read it, faster, I also think it's nice to let the creators have a little bit of time so that they can really make sure they're doing the best job. So the next issue will be the next chapter of the origin story. And then, of course, we assume at some point these will intersect as well. Moving over to Marvel, we're going to jump back a week to Mighty Thor number 10. Big spoilers here, but I suppose I should say that before I do reviews in general, because I guess they're all sort of spoilers. But Mighty Thor number 10, we have Thor and Agent Solomon attacking the Roxxon floating headquarters in order to save man/Minotaur guy Dario Agger, head of Roxxon, and who's kind of the big bad. But they have to rescue Agger because he is the only one who can stop his headquarters from exploding and killing lots and lots and lots of people. They manage to rescue him from the other supervillains, really, who have kidnapped him. But then Thor gets shot by a bullet that is slowly turning her into gold. All while other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents show up to try and arrest Thor, claiming that they know that she is Jane Foster, which we've been shown because we've seen Thor change into Jane Foster. However, the end of this book, twist ending, a portal opens up and guess who shows up to help out Thor? Jane Foster. Dum, 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 dum. So we will see what comes of that. Maybe it's sort of a body switching thing like the original Captain Marvel, or who knows? Who knows where this book will go in the future? Let's step away from the big two and talk about Buffy Season 10, number 30, because this is the final issue of Season 10. Spoilers ahead. We had talked about the last issue where Xander apparently is killed at the end, but he's not. He was just turned into a ghost by not Anya, this fake copy of Anya created by DeHoffrin. So she brings Xander back, and long story short, they defeat DeHoffrin. The other Vengeance Demons, including Jonathan, who's now a Vengeance Demon, decide to quit. And then we have a new status quo for Buffy by the end of the book. So if she's not the head, she's at least a member of a new magical council that'll be in charge of writing and enforcing the rules of magic. So they have this sort of interesting motley crew that includes the now teenage Giles and Spike and Dracula and a couple other characters that are unique to the comic book series. So if they do this right, it's going to be a really different book because they sort of tried to bring it back to what the Buffy show was, with her just running around and dusting vampires and tackling almost smaller issues while a larger threat looms. But now if she's, I don't know if this is going to turn it into like an Angel kind of thing where it's more of a things happening in boardrooms and then we have to go out and beat somebody up. I think if it's done well, it could be a very cool idea, but it won't feel traditional Buffy. So it's really only going to work for people that have stuck through the comic books. But at the same time, if the current comic book thing is what people are considering classic Buffy, I'm okay with a change of pace. In the end, I didn't mind season 10. I think it could have been about half as long. I don't think we needed 30 issues of this particular season. I feel like they could have done the big plot points they wanted and just done it that way and kept the plot moving along. But it is what it is. I am no longer going to be getting Buffy and regular single issues. I'm either going to go digital or trades with this one just because it takes forever to me to get to those single issues. And so they pile up. And as much fun as it is to crank through them, I would rather do that in a trade format. Now let's talk about the stuff that I have been reading via Hoopla. I read the first 2 volumes of Southern Bastards, also written by Jason Aaron, the guy who does Mighty Thor. It's a really interesting story. Spoilers for this book, so spoilers, 3, 2, and 1. At the end of Volume 1, the main character pulls a Sean Bean, very much like the end of the first season of Game of Thrones. The second volume then follows the person who did the deed and kind of digs into his past and the past of this town a little bit. And then it looks like Volume 3 is going to follow the daughter of the antagonist from Volume 1 as she leaves to return home, I assume, to this town. So I believe Volume 3 is out in trade, but my library doesn't have it yet digitally. So I look forward to when that comes out, and I'll pick it up. I suppose, yes, I could also get up, leave the audio booth, and actually head over to my library and see if they have it physically. But for now, I have moved over to reading 100 Bullets because unlike some of the other things where I can only, via Hoopla, I'm only allowed to borrow or check out a small number of titles each month. I think it's 5. So I went for 100 Bullets, almost not only because I heard it was good, but also because it's like the first 19 issues or something in one trade. So it's considered, one thing to borrow from the library. I'm really enjoying this series. It's written by Brian Azzarello, and it's a bunch of short stories. It feels very much like Sin City in that it's a collection of short stories that maybe kind of intersect, but not really. We don't see any crossover characters except for the main 2 people, and that would be, well, here's the plot of 100 Bullets. The idea is the main character has been betrayed somehow, and a man shows up out of the blue with a suitcase. In that suitcase is the proof of who was responsible for your betrayal, a gun, and 100 untraceable bullets. And what happens next is completely up to you. So it's this very interesting, here's the button you've always wanted to push, but now you have to think of what's going to happen if you push this button. I like how they're sort of one and done because I can read 1 or 2 issues and I've read a complete story and I can do that each night before bed. Plus, this is a lot better than Southern Bastards was as far as reading it frame by frame. So if it's the Hoopla app or just the way it's split up digitally, 100 Bullets is just nicer to read. I don't have to do as much zooming out and zooming back in because the app is giving me a single panel and that panel is super wide, so the text is still really tiny. It'll actually even zoom in on the text for me. I was saying bad things about Hoopla, not about Hoopla, but about reading comics panel by panel on my iPhone 5. This is much nicer. I look forward to seeing if I can find other comics that are split up as well as this one. And that's it for reviews. Meanwhile, on the pull list. Here's what I got for next week. The only big 2 comic coming out for me is Silver Surfer number 6. I kind of missed this series. I feel like it hasn't been around, but maybe it's just because I am doing a podcast every week, so now the weeks seem longer. So I'm looking forward to Silver Surfer number 6. I visited my local comic shop today to pick up that last issue of Buffy, and I also picked up Black Magick Volume 1. It's an Image book, so it was only $10. It's written by Greg Rucka, so naturally I'm probably going to be a fan. And I don't know if I've read good or bad things about it, but I was willing to invest in something new and pick up a new Greg Rucka book. And if I like it, then I have something I could pass on to my friends, see if I can get them hooked on it as well. Lazarus issue number 24 is also coming out. I've been reading this in trade format, and I've been really enjoying it in trade format since it's such a complex story. But I really kind of want to know what happens next in the story, so I might pick it up or I might look for it digitally. I don't know. I really don't want to cross over into single issues for this one, but Lazarus, just a good book. Again, Greg Rucka. I like Greg Rucka too much, guys. I know. And then also Saga 37 comes out. Brian K. Vaughan's Saga. Awesome book. A lot of people suggest it for those of you that don't read comics. It is very adult, but it is one of those books that you'll hear a lot in other podcasts and things as being suggested for new readers just because it's a very complex story with complex characters. So I'm a big fan of Saga, and I look forward to the new issue for that as well. And that's my poll list for next week. Archives. Here's what I'm going to do for the archives. Instead of suggesting a specific book, I'm going to say go check out Hoopla, go check out Overdrive, go check out what other sort of apps you have to digitally borrow something from your local public library. A lot of them will even let you sign up for your library card through the website for Hoopla or Overdrive. It'll send you to your library's website, your local library, so you can sign up for a library card, get a card, and then return. I don't know if you have to wait for it to arrive in the mail or anything like that, but I say go out there and see what your library has. Read it, and then let me know what you think, and let me know if you think there's something I should be adding to the archives for people to read. Ya ba ba da 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 wow ba ba da ba da ba 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 doom down bow. Topic of the week. So here's our topic for the week, kids. I got something very special for you. Way back in episode number 9, I had my wife, who we are calling the wife, on the show, and we talked about what it's like to be married to a comic book geek, what it's like to try out comics when you're not really sure if that's the sort of format for you, and we had this really good conversation. But there was a question I asked at the very end, and it sort of got us off into a really great tangent, but I cut it out for time. So here, uncut, is the end of that interview where I ask my wife the most important question a husband can ask his wife. Team Cap or Team Iron Man? Enjoy. Team Cap or Team Iron Man?
It's hard because I can see both sides.
Yeah.
But the problem is with that movie is I don't feel like in my opinion, I don't feel like they set it up to be a fair fight. Everybody who I have heard, which is granted a small sample size, is going to be Team Captain.
Okay.
Because I feel like the movie gives you the slant that direction. Because even when it's even split, one side versus the other, the big fight in the airplane hangar, somebody totally switches sides. It's Black Widow says, go Captain. So that even the people who are trying to tell this story and make it an even fight are like, no, we know Captain America should win, so we've got to give him this hand up of this completely even fight. So it doesn't give people a whole lot of room to choose Team Iron Man. And then to paint Iron Man as this irrational character in the end, it's playing on his emotions of Bucky killed your parents. Spoilers. I'm hoping people would have seen this by now.
Oh, no. Now you'll never be able to come back.
Oh, darn. Should have done that earlier.
Thank you.
It doesn't give you, as the viewer, an opportunity to really make a full decision because you now know that it's uneven, that even the storytellers are like, oh, no, Captain America has to have this little leg up, this hand me, this gimme, this grab, whatever, so that he can win in the end, that he can go and escape and do whatever he needs to do. And then in the end, you make Iron Man an emotional wreck and make him his whole storyline then driven based on his emotions. You know that since he is emotionally charged and irrational, how are you able to then justify his position?
Okay.
If that makes sense. So I feel like the movie is not presenting equally both sides. They clearly want you to choose Team Captain because then they can make more movies.
I will give that to you. That was a very sound argument. Certainly by the end of the movie. Yeah, I think when they talk about people splitting before the movie, that was more of the popularity, who do you like more, Iron Man or Captain America kind of thing. And at the beginning of the movie, it's totally clear. Clear cut as in both have rational things. So their sides are very clear and it's not emotionally charged. With the exception of maybe Captain, in this.
But that's not true, because the reason that Iron Man, Tony Stark, is leaning towards his position is because he totally got guilt-tripped by Dead Son's mom.
That's true.
Or grandma or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So he feels guilt over this. He feels bad that he was involved in saving millions of people, but a couple people died, and he just got guilt-tripped by this lady.
That's true.
So that's the only reason he's wanting to sign this.
Well, I don't know if I want you back now. You're just winning all the arguments.
Oh, how does that feel?
It feels... Oh, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good.
You just got trumped by the non-comic nerd.
Don't say Trump.
I just beat you.
There you go. That's it for this week, everybody. Don't forget, please leave me a star rating or a review on iTunes, you guys. That'd be super nice for you. I only have a couple, and it is the very best way for people to find the show and expand the listenership. So if you guys appreciate the show and would like to support me at all, or, have me continue doing this thing, a star rating or a review is the best way to ensure that you get more of me and my voice, which I know you enjoy, rattling around your ear holes. Ladies. Also, don't forget, this is part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. So head over to geek2geekcast.net and you can sign up for updates on all of the Geek to Geek Podcast Network shows. There are currently 3 other shows on the network. They are all very much worth your time. I enjoy listening to all of them every single week. That's why when I decided to do my own podcast, I asked to join their network because they're awesome and I like their shows. If you guys want to shoot me a message, you want to shoot me what you thought of Overdrive or Hoopla, or you have any other suggestions for me to read or questions, or you want to be a guest on the podcast, hit me up. I'm on Twitter at Noby. That is at KNOWBY. Or you can email me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. That's all I got for you guys this week, so I'm going to close the comic box, and we will see you guys next time. Doop-a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Dibba-dibba-doo-doo, comic box, a doo ba da doo 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 doo. Lots of news this week. Da 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 da. Got some more stuff again. Da 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 doo doo. Got to finish the wife, the thing. Dibba 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 doo doo doo. Ba da ba doo down. Da 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 doo down. Woo. Da 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 doo down. Da 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 doo. Going on way too long. And just to ultra nerd out with you guys, I may or may not have ordered that Marvel Legends full-sized Captain America shield. I may or may not have pre-ordered it. It may or may not be arriving next week. I may or may not be the ultra geek. It's going to be so great.